blessings, and welcome to the Path to Freedom. My name is Daniel Roquillo, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for tuning in, for participating, for joining me in a moment of setting ourselves free. Free to soar, free to be in love, free to be in joy, free to be in ever-expanding harmony and wholeness and abundance and beauty and love and all these freedom, all these beautiful qualities, and setting ourselves free from fear and worry and doubt and a sense of not being enough and a sense of not having enough. So this is what this path is all about, setting ourselves free to be and from whatever. So thank you so much for being here. The topic for today, we're talking about, or actually the topic for today is nothing has really changed. And I was out on the deck a few days ago, and I was having an experience. There was something that was bothering me. I was in resistance over something, and I could feel some negative emotions welling up from within. And so I was out on the deck, and I did my meditation, and I went into prayer, and somewhere in that I was pulled out of my mind, and whatever I was fuming over, I was pulled out of it, and my attention was brought to nature. And there are these beautiful lilac bushes, there are these magnificent trees and the grass and the fields and the sky. And I realized that nothing has changed from this moment of me being caught up by my stories and beliefs, or the ego stories and beliefs, and from a previous moment when I absolutely knew that all was well, when I absolutely knew that something wonderful is happening, when joy and love and peace were reigning supreme within me, when I was so steeped in these higher vibrations. Nothing had changed at all. And so I felt inspired to explore this a little bit. So this message is as much for me as it is for anyone else. Because that's how it is for us. When we get pulled into whatever we get pulled into, when we get pulled into our minds, when we get pulled into our fears, when we get pulled into our worries or doubts, when we get pulled into our stories or beliefs or perceptions or judgments or opinions or thoughts as to what should and should not be, when we get pulled into a sense of lack and scarcity, a sense of not being enough, and a sense of not having enough, a sense of being separate from God or spirit or whatever we choose to call it, the only thing that has ever changed is in our minds. As I was sitting out on the deck, and it was a beautiful day, and the sun was shining, and the sky was blue, and it was warm, and it was nice, and I became aware that even though I was experiencing a lot of inner turmoil and turbulence, the grass was still growing, the lilac bushes were still blooming with their beautiful purple flowers, the sky was still blue, the leaves were still on the trees, the wind was still blowing, the birds were still singing, the butterflies were still fluttering. Life was still lifing, God was still ising. So nothing had really changed except for my attention having been pulled from the gifts, the blessings, the goodness of God that is fully present in this moment, in every single moment. For my attention being pulled from that into my stories, into my beliefs about what should and should not be. And in this case, I didn't even remember what it was that I was caught up by, but it had something to do with some sort of condition that I resisted, that I thought should not be. And so we get to come back. We get to come back over and over and over. And this is why we're so wise to have as a practice. We've been talking a whole lot about practices, to have a solid foundation of bringing ourselves back to the nowness of this moment, a solid foundation of being a prayer without ceasing, of being a living, moving, walking prayer. And I'm not speaking about moving into prayer like a formal prayer all of the time, but just having that as our habitual way of being, to lean into gratitude, to lean into thanksgiving, to lean into just knowing, reminding ourselves, coming back to whatever affirmations or whatever principles we lean into. Like I lean into reminding myself over and over and over again that all is well, that something wonderful is happening, that everything is working for the highest good. Always, always, always. And the more steeped we are in that, the easier and the quicker we get to pull ourselves out of the stories that we get caught up in. I was only in this story, I don't know, 20-25 minutes or so. And then had this been like a number of years ago, I probably would have stood in this for a number of days. But thanks to my practice and due to my practice, which is ever expanding, I now was able to release my attachment to these thought forms that were creating havoc within me. That were like poison in my body. Nothing had really changed except for where I turned my attention. Nothing had really changed except for what I was giving energy to. Nothing had really changed except for what I chose to look for. And when I became aware that I can look at the beauty in nature, I can look at the flowers, I can look at the butterflies, I can observe and witness the bumblebees and the bees and the wasps and the butterflies that are flying all over the place. I can rejoice in the sun. I can bask in the sun. I can allow my attention to be drawn to the clouds. I don't have to dwell in my mind when the thoughts that are flowing through my mind, when they are not serving me. I don't have to pay them any attention at all. But I can allow myself, I can give myself permission to withdraw my attention, to pull away from these lower thought forms, these low vibration thought forms. That would, whatever I was thinking, the regurgitation, the rumination, the repeating of whatever thought form I was engaged in, that was not in alignment with light or love or joy or peace or harmony or wholeness or abundance or any of that. There's no law saying that we have to give these attention. There's no law saying that we need to listen to these thought forms. We're not obliged to pay attention to everything that flows through our minds. But we, being made in the image and likeness of Spirit, we do have the ability to turn our attention away, to take back our minds and fill them with whatever we want to fill them with. It doesn't mean that I'm not aware And that was the case when I realized that I don't have to listen to these thought forms. When I began to turn my attention toward the magnificent display of beauty and goodness in nature, I was still aware of the complaints in my mind. I was still aware of the rumination. I wasn't attached to it. I could still be in joy, and I could still lift myself higher and higher and higher into the beautiful and good for my life vibrations. I could still allow my consciousness to expand while being aware of these thought forms that kept repeating themselves for some time. I didn't time it, so I have no idea for how long, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that we have supremacy over our minds. We get to choose. We get to choose. And we get to realize that nothing has changed. God still is. God is still good. And as I said, the flowers are still blooming. They're still beautiful. The birds are still singing. The sun is still shining. The stars are still glowing. The moon is still waning or waxing or whatever it does. The tides are still flowing in and out. The wind is still blowing. The mountains are still mountains. The trees are still trees. We can turn our attention to that, allowing ourselves to be immersed, allowing our attention to be pulled into whatever serves us, as opposed to that which does not serve us. So that's the invitation for today, to challenge, to really challenge the mind when it gets caught up in that which is not in alignment with who we wish to be or how we wish to show up or what we wish for our lives to be about. We get to challenge it. We don't have to just follow suit into whatever vibration or whatever thought form that the mind gets caught up by, but we get to choose. So the invitation is to set that intention, to take back our minds, to continuously ask ourselves, what I'm turning my attention toward in this moment, these choices that I'm making right now, or that choice that I just made, is this in alignment with who I wish to be? Is this in alignment with what I wish for my life to be about? And if the answer is no, well, hey, we get to choose again. We get to choose, because every single moment is a new beginning. Every single moment we have the opportunity to make a new choice, to choose something different, to take off in a new direction. Every single moment is a fresh start where we get to set ourselves free. Free to be in ever-expanding joy. Free to be in ever-expanding peace. Free to be in ever-expanding love. Free to be in ever-expanding harmony, wholeness, abundance, beauty, creativity, freedom. Every single moment. Because God is still good, regardless of conditions, regardless of circumstances, regardless of where we turn our attention, regardless of what we think about, what we talk about, what we feel about. God is still good. That never changes, because God cannot go against its own nature. God cannot compromise itself. Spirit cannot change up on itself. So we get to choose. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening, for participating as always. I absolutely bless your day, and I bless your way. Knowing, feeling that right where you are, all is well. Knowing that right where you are, something wonderful is happening. Knowing that right where you are, everything is working for your highest good. Many blessings, much love.